What's wrong?
Go to hell.
Released in 1973, American Graffiti throws you straight into a blazing, nostalgic ride through teenage car culture of the early 60s. Endless summer nights, the echo of rock and roll, neon lights flickering and drag races burning rubber on the streets of Modesto. It all looks dreamy on screen, but behind the camera was a production nightmare. George Lucas had to juggle a shoestring budget so tight that he rented vintage cars from locals. A real crash sent one car flying into a fence and brought police swarming to the set. And the studio came close to killing the project before it even got off the ground.
Man, you come on back and I'll show you a few things.
Oh, race him. You can beat him.
You got just 2 seconds to get your ass over in your corner.
Don't worry. I won't rape you.
Dangerous, chaotic, and full of surprises. American Graffiti was also the place where Harrison Ford drunk. In nearly all his scenes, somehow radiated an untamable, reckless charm that defined his character. But what other secrets were buried in those long nights of filming? Let's uncover 20 bizarre facts about American Graffiti, the film that made stars broke Hollywood's rules and rewrote the way we see youth forever. 20. Harrison Ford only agreed to join if he didn't have to cut his hair. When Harrison Ford signed on to American Graffiti, he was at a low point in his career, working as a carpenter to support his wife and 2 kids. Auditioning for the role of Bob Falfa turned into a turning point, but only on one condition: he refused to cut his hair. Ford worried that changing his look would limit future acting opportunities, and he made his stance crystal clear. Instead of forcing him, George Lucas came up with a clever fix. Bob Falfa would wear a Stetson hat throughout the film. Not only did it cover Ford's long hair, but it also became a defining trait of the character, amplifying his image as a rebellious, free-spirited street racer. The Stetson turned into an inseparable part of Falfa's persona, elevating his presence in the film's drag race showdowns and memorable moments. 19. A shoestring budget meant renting vintage cars from locals for peanuts. American Graffiti had an astonishingly tiny budget, just $775,000, about $4.5 million today. That forced Lucas and his crew to get extremely creative in recreating the teenage world of the early 60s. Renting classic cars from professional companies was out of the question, so Lucas struck a deal with local car owners. For just $20, $25 per car, plus a free meal, he assembled an authentic lineup of 1955 to 1962 machines to bring Modesto's cruising scene to life. Over 300 cars from Ford Thunderbirds to Chevrolet Impalas, along with coupes and sedans of the era, rolled into Petaluma, transforming the small town into a drag racing paradise. These weren't just background props, they roared through high-speed sequences, delivering raw authenticity on screen. Local gearheads even volunteered as stunt drivers, racing on set and off, infusing the film with the exact noisy, unpolished energy Lucas wanted. 18. Filming only happened at night and it was brutal. The shoot was nothing short of punishing for cast and crew alike. The entire film was shot over 28 consecutive nights, with filming running from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. to capture the nightlife energy of teenage drag racing and hangouts. To achieve the film's luminous nighttime look, Lucas recruited legendary cinematographer Haskell Wexler as a visual consultant. Wexler, who worked unpaid, flew from Los Angeles to Petaluma nightly and stayed until dawn. He later recalled, "I was so exhausted, I told George, just point me in the right direction and I'll shoot." The grueling schedule took a toll. Cast members suffered from exhaustion and chronic sleep deprivation. Ron Howard described the experience bluntly. "It was like living in a vampire movie." What do you think? Could you survive working nights non-stop for a month? 17. Wolfman. Jack recorded his lines in a bathroom. Wolfman. Jack, one of the legendary DJs of the 1960s, had become a symbol of teen rebellion through the airwaves. However, when invited to appear in American Graffiti as himself, he refused to show up on screen. He insisted that his mystique existing as an invisible voice on the radio was the very essence of his appeal. Director George Lucas initially agreed to this condition, but later surprised Wolfman Jack by arranging a scene where Kurt comes face to face with him. At first, Jack resisted, but eventually he gave in, delivering a performance that was both charming and self-deprecating. The moment not only shattered the illusion, but somehow preserved the magic, giving audiences the rare thrill of seeing the legend step out from behind the microphone. In a quirky twist to achieve the eerie echo effect of his voice in the scene where Kurt calls into the radio station, Wolfman Jack recorded his lines in the bathroom of the film crew's trailer. With no budget for a professional sound studio, he used the natural acoustics of the small space to create his signature haunting resonance. George Lucas called it a dirty but sexy trick, and the result gave audiences chills with its ghostly midnight vibe. Though his screen time was brief, Wolfman Jack left an unforgettable impression. Did you enjoy his appearance in American Graffiti? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. 16. A real car accident on set led to a police investigation. A genuine car accident occurred on set, forcing the production crew to face an investigation and handle the situation delicately. During the drag race scene between John Milner and Bob Falfer, one of the background cars lost control and crashed into a fence in Petaluma. The incident prompted local police to cordon off the filming area for an investigation, causing a serious disruption to the shooting schedule. To avoid having the film's permit revoked and to keep production moving, director George Lucas had to negotiate with the local police. He invited the entire police team out for burgers at the Real Mel's Drive-In, a landmark also featured in the film. In return, the officers agreed to overlook the accident on the condition that the crew would no longer hold off-the-clock drag races. The deal saved the shoot and left the team with one of the most unforgettable behind-the-scenes stories of the entire production. 15. Ron Howard didn't want the role. Ron Howard, still remembered as Opie from The Andy Griffith Show, hesitated before accepting the role of Steve Bolander. He feared another clean-cut teen role would trap him in typecasting. Lucas convinced him otherwise by pitching the film as a poetic coming-of-age story, more art than popcorn flick. Howard agreed on the condition that Steve's character would be written with more nuance. Howard actively helped rework some of his lines to avoid making Steve a one-note good kid. Instead, he pushed for Steve to reflect a young man wrestling with identity and life choices. His performance ultimately won praise, and ironically laid the foundation for Howard's eventual leap into directing. 14. Lucas's co-writers hated the ending. American Graffiti closes with a series of title cards revealing the fates of the main characters after that fateful summer night in 1962, delivering an unexpected and somewhat grim finale. John Milner was killed by a drunk driver in 1964, Terry Toad Fields went missing in action in Vietnam in 1965, while Steve Bolander became an insurance agent and Kurt Henderson moved to Canada to work as a writer. Co-writers Willard Hoyk and Gloria Katz, who had worked closely with George Lucas from the earlier stages of the script, were deeply unhappy with this choice. They felt that revealing only the destinies of the male characters was unfair and too bleak compared to the otherwise vibrant tone of the film. Hoyk and Katz pushed Lucas to reconsider, but stubborn like many of his characters, he refused to budge. The ending sparked debate over both its emotional weight and artistic intent. Some critics, like Pauline Kael, argued that ignoring the female characters' futures was dismissive and reflected Hollywood's storytelling biases at the time. Yet for others, this very choice became the film's haunting signature, turning American Graffiti into not just a nostalgic ride through youth, but a somber reminder of the inevitability of time and fate. What do you think of American Graffiti's ending? Do you love it or find it too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. 13. Lucas used real graffiti font from Modesto walls for the film's poster. When designing the poster for American Graffiti, George Lucas chose a hand-drawn font inspired by actual graffiti he'd seen scrawled on walls in his hometown of Modesto. It wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a statement of authenticity, embodying the rebellious youth spirit of the early 1960s. But Universal Pictures hated it so much that they sent Lucas a list of 50 alternative titles, including Rock Around the Block and Another Quiet Night in Modesto. Lucas refused to compromise, holding firm to the original design and title, which ultimately became iconic. His insistence proved visionary. The graffiti-style logo became inseparable from the film's identity and seeped into pop culture. Even the smash hit sitcom Happy Days borrowed the same design for its opening credits, showing just how far-reaching American Graffiti's influence spread in American media. 12. Paul Le Mat was nearly arrested for test driving a drag racer off-set. Paul Le Mat, who played John Milner, trained with real Modesto drag racers to bring authenticity to his role. But one night off-set, Le Mat borrowed the film's black 55 Chevy to sneak into an actual street drag race. His stunt caught the attention of local police and he was nearly arrested. George Lucas had to personally apologize and pay a $200 fine to smooth things over. Even so, Lucas decided to keep Le Mat in the cast, saying he was living exactly like John Milner. That authenticity paid off. John Milner's bright yellow 1932 Ford Deuce Coupe went on to become one of the most legendary cars in American pop culture, symbolizing teenage rebellion and car culture of the 60s. The drag race between Milner and Bob Falfa Harrison Ford remains one of the most iconic moments in the film. Do you think Paul Le Mat embodied John Milner perfectly? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. 11. Suzanne Somers prepared for hours despite only 3 minutes of screen time. Suzanne Somers appeared for barely 3 minutes as the blonde girl in The White Thunderbird, yet her presence left an unforgettable impression. With only one line of dialogue, "I love you," she poured extraordinary effort into creating an aura of mystery and allure. Somers spent hours practicing in front of the mirror to perfect the dreamy smile and gaze Lucas demanded, capturing the spirit of a romantic summer muse. Because the production's budget was so tight the crew couldn't provide wardrobe or makeup. Undeterred, Somers bought her own white dress and hired a personal makeup artist. Her dedication paid off, giving Kurt Henderson's storyline a haunting and magical touch. Just 3 years later, Somers skyrocketed to stardom as Chrissy Snow in the hit sitcom Three's Company. 10. Music consumed 10% of the film's budget. George Lucas believed music was the soul of American Graffiti. To capture the authentic teenage atmosphere of the late 50s and early 60s, he spent around $80,000, more than 10% of the entire budget, securing rights to 42 classic rock and roll hits from 1955 to 1962, including tracks by Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly. At the time, Universal Pictures balked at the cost and suggested using cheaper sound-alike recordings. But Lucas refused to compromise. The gamble paid off. The soundtrack album 41 Original Hits from the Soundtrack of American Graffiti was released in August 1973 and became a phenomenon. It reached number 10 on the Billboard 200 and went triple platinum in the US, selling more than 5 million copies. Did you love the music in the film? Share your thoughts. 9. The crew was kicked out of town after just one night of filming. At first, Lucas and his team planned to shoot in San Rafael, California, which resembled Modesto circa 1962. But after just one night, the city council shut them down, One crew member was arrested for growing marijuana, and the nighttime street closures caused chaos for local businesses. Complaints piled up, and the production was forced to leave. The crew relocated to Petaluma, about 20 miles north, where they were warmly welcomed. The town's historic streets and open layout proved ideal for capturing the film's cruising culture. Many of American Graffiti's most iconic sequences, from neon-lit cruising to the climactic drag race, were filmed in Petaluma, cementing the town's place in movie history. 8. Cindy Williams and Ron Howard dated off-screen but broke up due to the grueling schedule. Ron Howard and Cindy Williams. The two leads of the film developed a real-life romance during production. Their relationship blossomed from the intimacy on set, where they portrayed teenage love stories under the neon glow of Mel's Drive-In. However, the grueling all-night shooting schedule and relentless workload quickly wore them down, and their brief romance ended as dawn broke. Howard later recalled with regret, "We fell in love under the neon lights of Mel's, but by morning we had broken up." Though short-lived, their off-screen connection translated into genuine chemistry on screen. Together, they brought heartfelt emotion to their romantic scenes, amplifying the film's themes of youth passion and the bittersweet transition from adolescence to adulthood. Cindy Williams's portrayal of Laurie became emblematic of the dreamy, romantic young woman, while Howard embodied the spirited, eager young man searching for direction. After American Graffiti, Cindy Williams pursued a successful television career, most notably in Laverne and Shirley, where she and Penny Marshall formed one of the most iconic duos in American sitcom history. Her experiences on the set of American Graffiti not only honed her craft, but also opened the door to lasting recognition in the entertainment world. 7. The producer became Mackenzie Phillips' legal guardian during filming. Mackenzie Phillips was only 12 years old when filming began, yet she was cast as Carol Morrison, the young girl who happens to catch a ride with John Milner. However, under California labor laws, child actors were required to have a legal guardian on set. To resolve this, producer Gary Kurtz agreed to become Phillips's legal guardian throughout the entire production. Mackenzie Phillips was the daughter of John Phillips, a member of the music group The Mamas and the Papas, and her mother was Susan Adams. Despite coming from a show business family, the lack of a legal guardian meant she had to live with the Kurtz family during filming. Phillips later shared that it was a happy experience and that she felt welcomed as if she were truly part of the Kurtz household. Due to her young age, Phillips was restricted from performing in scenes with sensitive content. Still, she displayed maturity and professionalism in her performances. 6. Harrison Ford nearly ruined the entire shooting schedule. At the time Harrison Ford joined American Graffiti, he was still an unknown actor, earning a living as a carpenter for Hollywood stars. He had yet to gain recognition and was desperately seeking a break into the film industry. When George Lucas offered him the role of Bob Falfa, a reckless street racer with a white Chevy Ford, accepted, even though it wasn't a leading role. The filming process, however, was anything but smooth. Ford, with his free-spirited lifestyle and disregard for rules, caused several problems on set. He was thrown out of a hotel for inappropriate behaviour, forced to sleep in his car, and even memorised his lines by carving them into his hands. At one point, the shooting schedule was nearly derailed because of him. Yet Lucas chose to keep Ford in the film, believing that his rugged look perfectly embodied a real street racer, bringing an authenticity to Bob Falfa that no one else could deliver. Though small, the role opened the door to Ford's career in cinema. After American Graffiti, he began landing more significant roles, eventually becoming one of the world's most famous movie stars, especially as Han Solo in the Star Wars saga. Were you impressed by Ford's role in American Graffiti? Share your thoughts in the comments below. 5. George Lucas wrote the script to win a bet with Francis Ford Coppola. After the crushing failure of his sci-fi film THX 1138 1971, George Lucas was confronted by his friend and colleague Francis Ford Coppola with a blunt challenge. Stop making weird movies. Do something warm, something human. This wasn't just advice, it was a dare pushing Lucas out of his comfort zone and into trying a completely new genre. The coming-of-age comedy. With Coppola's backing fresh off his massive success with The Godfather, Lucas wrote the script for American Graffiti, drawing directly from his own teenage nights cruising in Modesto, California, where he once nearly lost his life after crashing his Fiat Spider into trees. The film became not only a vivid portrait of 1960s car culture, but also a journey of self-discovery for Lucas himself. The character Kurt Henderson was inspired by Lucas's own college years at USC, while John Milner reflected his youth spent immersed in cars. Even the nickname Toad was a nod to his high school days. 4. Richard Dreyfuss almost died on set. Richard Dreyfuss, who played Kurt Henderson, came dangerously close to death during what seemed like a simple scene. Kurt was supposed to jump into a moving car, but a stunt driver miscalculated, causing Dreyfuss to slip and nearly get run over. The wheels missed him by inches. He escaped with only a bruised hip, but the scare was so severe that Lucas reshot the scene using a dummy to avoid risking Dreyfuss's life again. Later, Dreyfuss admitted it was the first time he'd ever faced a serious accident while filming. 3. George Lucas forced the cast to live their roles off-camera. Lucas didn't just want American Graffiti to look like a story about teenagers, he wanted it to feel authentic. To achieve this, he made the actors embody their characters even when the cameras weren't rolling. Richard Dreyfuss had to act anxious and bookish in public, while Harrison Ford roamed around San Rafael and Modesto in character as Bob Falfa Cowboy Hat on blasting rock music in the black 55 Chevy so convincingly that locals mistook him for an actual street punk. The blurred line between actor and character gave the film its striking realism. Even the cars became characters. John Milner's iconic yellow 1932 Ford Deuce Coupe was rescued from a rusting junkyard, no seatbelts, no AC, barely road legal. Customizer. Richard Ruth rebuilt it into a low-slung V8 monster that roared with style and menace. It became a star in its own right, worshipped by fans and copied by collectors across America. The car might have rotted away in obscurity had Lucas not revived it for the film. 2. The sequel was a total failure. The 1979 follow-up. More American Graffiti was a disaster. Lucas, though not directing, still exerted control from behind the scenes. The film experimented with multiple aspect ratios to represent different historical eras from street protests to the Vietnam War, but the fragmented storytelling destroyed its rhythm and charm. Lucas wanted to show the turbulence of the late 60s, but the bleak tone, heavy-handed themes of war and protest and segmented structure stripped away the joy and neon magic of the original. The result was a commercial flop, earning only a tenth of the first film's box office. The failure proved that Lucas's nostalgic vision of youth was best left untouched in the original classic. 1. Charles Martin Smith's real scooter crash made the final cut. Fans will remember the moment Charles Martin Smith as Terry Toad Fields loses control of his Vespa and crashes into a trash can at Mel's Drive-In. What many don't know is that the accident wasn't scripted. It was a real crash, and Lucas decided to keep it because it perfectly fit Toad's clumsy character. Afterward, Smith had to spend a week learning to handle a manual transmission just to keep filming. The Vespa itself was a 1959 Piaggio GS 160, carefully chosen to fit the early 60s vibe. American Graffiti is more than a film about youth cars and rock and roll. It's a treasure chest of behind-the-scenes stories. From Harrison Ford's drunken antics to Richard Dreyfuss's near-death stunt from Suzanne Summers' obsessive prep for a 3-minute role, to Wolfman Jack recording in a bathroom for eerie echo effects, every detail testifies to George Lucas's stubborn vision and uncompromising creativity. And you, when you watch American Graffiti, do you feel like you're drifting into those neon-lit summer nights of rebellion cars and music? Which character or scene struck you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's greatest classics.